Hi guys, if you've been here before, welcome back to the Gregorio Girls channel, and if you're new, thanks so much for checking us out. My name's Shauna, and today we're doing a how to blend eyeshadow video. So I'm going to show you, obviously, how to blend your eyeshadow, but give you some tips on brushes, prepping your eyes for eyeshadow, and things like that. And I can already tell this is going to be kind of a longer video, so let's jump right into the tutorial. So for me, I have 4 steps that I like to follow in my blending routine to make sure that I have the perfect, most seamless eyeshadow blend. And they are brows, base, brushes, and blend. So first, starting with brows, this is kind of an optional step. It's not crucial to blending or how well your eyeshadow is going to blend, but I always like to have my eyebrows done before I do my eyeshadow. And the reason for that is that when I have my brows done, they're framing my face, so they are giving me a good guide of the dimensions of where I want to blend out to. But again, that's not for everybody. Sometimes people like to do their eyebrows after, so this is definitely something that is more of a preference thing. It's all basically preference. There's really no rules to makeup, but I feel like this step is especially more optional than the other ones. So rule number 2 is base, and you always want to lay down an eyeshadow primer or a base before you start blending your eyeshadows. And the reason for that is if you're just going to go in with your eyeshadow before priming your eyelids, your natural oils are going to mix with those eyeshadows and it's going to go on really patchy. Your shadow's not going to blend well and it's not going to last long at all. So you always want to make sure you are laying down a base before you go in with the eyeshadows. What I like to use for a base is the MAC Soft Ochre Paint Pot. And I really like MAC's paint pots because here's what it looks like, because they're really just opaque, and when you put down the base, it really cancels out if you have any veins on your eyelids or anything like that. It just gives you a nice wash of color. It totally cancels out any imperfections on your eyelid. So I'm just going to take some of this on a flat little concealer brush and just put this all over my eyelids. And the MAC paint pots actually make your eyeshadow last really long. I think these are the best eyeshadow primers I've ever used thus far. Okay, so you can see how it kind of just cancels out all of the color that was on my lid and gives me just a nice clean base to work with. But of course we can't just put on that base and then go right into our eyeshadow because it's so tacky and sticky. We have to set it with a powder. So you just want to pick a powder that is either translucent or matches your skin tone just to set that base. And this just makes sure that it doesn't move anywhere, and again helps the shadows blend much better. It's just kind of like setting your face. You don't just roll out with just your foundation on because it's going to slide all around and not stay on your face. You always set it with the powder. So it's kind of the same idea with your eyeshadow primer. And another little tip for eyeshadow base, you can also use a concealer as your base as well. I know a lot of people use the Tarte Shape Tape or something like that to set. I think concealer also helps if you have drier skin, so if you have drier eyelids, because the concealer is a liquid, it's going to put more hydration back into your lids as opposed to something like the MAC Paint Pot, which is a little bit more of like a clayish consistency, I want to say. Okay, now that our eyes are all primed and set, rule number 3 is brushes. So obviously brushes are going to be super important to blending your eyeshadow. Do you need all of these brushes? No, not necessarily, but I will just kind of go through and explain as I'm blending why I'm using the brushes that I'm using, what they're good for, and things like that. And before I even dip into my eyeshadow, I just want to say your brushes should be clean. So to get the best blend, you really want your brushes to be clean, because if, I still had makeup on here from me doing my eyeshadow yesterday, those colors are going to mix into what I'm trying to do today, and it's just going to be muddy and not attractive at all. And also, your brushes don't have to be expensive. So I definitely use a lot of brushes each time I go to do my makeup, especially my eyeshadow. I think I have a bazillion blending brushes just because I love them so much, and they each you know, really help you achieve that really flawless gradient blend. But these are Morphe brushes. Morphe brushes are super inexpensive. I think these were each $6, and they're really well made. So if you're looking for some good brushes but you're kind of on a budget, definitely check out Morphe brushes. Okay, let's get into the actual blending. So I'm going to be using the Jaclyn Hill and Morphe palette right here. Ours is really dirty, so just excuse that. So we're going to be doing just a really simple eye look today. I'm probably only going to use about 3 to 4 eyeshadows. And the first shadow I want to go into is this one right here. So just a really nice light color. This is going to be our transition shade. So you always want to start with a nice light color because that's what all your other colors are going to fade into. So that's the one that we put right in our crease up to our brow bone. So the brush that I'm going to take for my transition shade is the Morphe R37. And I like this brush for my first color because it's tapered. So the product's going to deposit right here on top, but it does have these short hairs on the side. So when I do put pressure on the brush as I'm blending, it's going to just fan out a little bit and the product's going to be able to spread and blend really nicely and really seamlessly up to my brow bone. And of course, you always want to put a little bit on your brush, tap off the excess, and then build from there. So start with a little bit, and then if you want more pigment, you want more color, dip in again and blend up. Okay, so how I start blending is I like to do circular and windshield wiper motions. So I start in the corner of my eye, and I do circular motions, and this helps the eyeshadow start to really blend up nicely. Because I want most of the darker pigment to be on the outer corner of my eye, I do the circles over here, and then I start to move it upwards. And then with what's left, I'll do a windshield wiper motion into my crease. So I don't want it to be too dark in here because that's not gonna look, I don't like the way that looks. I want the darkness to be out here and then just have it fade. And blending does take a little bit of time, so be patient, give yourself enough time when you're doing your makeup if you have somewhere to go to be able to do this so that you're not rushed and then your makeup's not all muddy and not as blended as you'd like it to be. And the way you want to hold your brush, when you're blending a transition shade, you want to hold your brush at the back. So this gives you more of a range of motion to be able to just kind of blend and blend up, and it's not as precise. So it's going to give you that nice, just a blown out and airbrushed look. If you hold it too close in, it's just going to be too concentrated and you're just going to get the color more concentrated in one area, if that makes sense. And then of course, light pressure. So you don't want to be like, you just want to do light pressure and just really have it blend up and out. I tend to like be aggressive and I always have to make myself like calm down, it's just blending. And I feel like when you start out here on the corner of your eye with the circles, this usually helps me get like that nice kind of cat eye look where how the shadow kind of drags out. But if you want your shadow to drag out just a little bit more, you can always just take the side of your brush and go like this with the excess and help elongate that cat eye look. Okay, and next I'm going to dip into this color right here, and I'm going to use my Morphe M518 brush. And I'm going to place that color a little bit lower in my crease, so right under where we just put the first color. And I like this brush for that because it doesn't have the short bristles on the side, so it's going to be a little bit more of a precise placement of the color, but still allow me to blend really well and really nicely, and it also just kind of fits like right in the corner of my eye. So I just really like the shape of this. And I usually try not to dip my brush. I usually try not to dip one brush in two colors. And the reason for that is just when you start to mix colors, it doesn't always matter. Like sometimes if I'm doing a look and I wanted to go in with this color and then I wanted to deepen it up just subtly with this color, I might use the same brush. just because the colors are so similar, but I really try not to because it does make your eyeshadow, again, just more muddy. But if you don't have a ton of brushes where you can just use one for each color, especially if you are doing a more in-depth type of look, like if you're doing something with a lot of transition colors and just a whole bunch of colors blended together, what you can do if you don't want to buy a bazillion brushes is just get a cotton pad and then get some makeup brush cleaner spray. So this is the Japanesque one. This is their rosewater scent one, and you can just spray some on that and then wipe your brush off, and then you're good to go. But if you do that, just make sure you give your brush a minute or two to dry, because if you clean it off and then go right into an eyeshadow and try to blend, of course there is a makeup remover on your brush, and obviously that's going to just mess up your makeup and ruin everything that you just did. Okay, so back to blending. So I'm going to take just, again, a little bit of that color, especially since we're moving into more of the darker shades. Just want to make sure I'm getting a little bit of that and then building as I go. So again, circular motions and build that color. Also, another tip, just like you want to make sure you're using good brushes, you also want to make sure you're using good shadows. So if you're just using kind of crappy shadows, no matter the brush or your technique or whatever, it's probably not gonna blend out exactly the way you want it to. So next, to blend out those shadows just a little bit more, I'm gonna take a clean blending brush. This is the Morphe M441 brush. It's kind of similar to the R37. They're both pretty fluffy brushes, but I just kind of like to keep one clean so I can go in and buff out any harsh lines and just kind of make my eyeshadow a little bit more blended and airbrushed looking. Next, I want to go in with this color right here, and I'm going to take that on my Morphe M433 brush. So what I like, and this is clean, I know it looks like there's red on it, and what I like about this brush is that it's a little bit flatter. It's still kind of a blending brush, but it's like thinner this way. Still has some shorter bristles on the end, but still has the taper up top as well. And it lets me pack on color, but also allows me to blend it out as well. So I kind of just pat it on in here, and again, since we're moving into the darker colors, a little bit first, then add more, and then I just kind of flip them, and again, circles, and then windshield wipers. Again though, because the shape of the brush, it's pretty good for packing on, and I can blend right in my crease. But if I want to blend it up and out, this shape is not too good for that because it's not as fluffy. So I'll just go back in with my M441 and start trying to blend that and have it fade into the colors on my brow bone and up. And next, I'm going to dip into this super dark brown color right here. And I'm going to take that on my Morphe M321 brush. So this is a pencil brush, and this is going to help me get right into the corner of my eye. So you can see how my dark brown is kind of patchy right in here. My eyes, I think, also kind of wrinkle there because I have hooded eyes. But this is going to help me get right in there with that super dark color and make sure the outer corner of my eye is nice and dark, because that's where we want the most definition and the darkest color. And then I'm going to take a tiny little blending brush. This is the Morphe M562, and I'm just going to go in and use back and forth motions and really small little circles to try and blend that out. And I'm not going to go too high with it because I kind of want it to stay right in the outer corner of my eye. And I'm holding this brush closer in so I have more control over it, and so I can focus it right in that area. And same with the pencil brush. When I'm placing that in my eye, or in the outer corner of my eye, I want to hold it pretty far up so I have more control of the placement of the eyeshadow. And then since there's a decent amount of color on my Morphe M441, that was the brush I was keeping clean just to go in and make sure everything was really well blended. I'm going to take some of my spray and just try and wipe it off a little bit because I want to go back in and blend out that darker color. You can see right in my crease there's a little bit of patchiness. That's where eyeshadow just doesn't really like to blend on my eye for some reason. So I'm going to go in with my Morphe M441 again after I let it dry just a little bit so I can make sure that all those colors are really well blended in my crease. And next, just to kind of complete the look, I'm going to take my powder again and just put that right over the bare part of my eye. I'm just doing that on an all over shadow brush. This will just make sure that the line right in here doesn't look so patchy and it looks nice and blended together. I still want my outer edge to be, or my outer V to be a little bit darker, so I'm just gonna pop more of that. I think this is like a purpley brown that I was using. This color right here from the palette. And just lightly tap a little bit of that on the outsides of my eye. And then for my lash line, I actually really just like the little brushes that come in the Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes. I really like them for my lash line, but you can also use a pencil brush just like the M441 that I was using earlier. I'm going to go ahead and dip into this brown right here. This was like the second or third color that we used. And sweep that along my lash line. And then I'm going to dip into this dark color right here that we had put on our outer corner and put that just on the outer corner of my lash line as well. Okay, and I'm going to pop on some lashes and lipstick and then I'll be back to wrap up the video. Okay, and this is the look all finished. If you are wondering, I am wearing Too Faced Melted Matte in Queen Bee on my lips. So I hope you picked up a few new tips in this video if you are trying to master eyeshadow blending. I myself am still trying to master it. So if there's anything that I didn't do or a technique that you use that you really like, or a brush or anything like that, let me know in the comments down below. And before you leave, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, follow us on Instagram, and like us on Facebook as well. And with that, thanks again so much for watching, and we will see you in our next video.